Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's featured Reddit stories are from MaliciousCompliance. Story 1 is by Shellyfish04. I'm sorry if I sound a little froggy, guys. I've been sick since before Christmas. It's way better now than it was. I'll do my best to sound as clear as I can. I work in a small startup company of around 12 people. It's a very good atmosphere in the office and everyone pulls their weight and is super motivated. However, our boss likes to micromanage us, even though he has no expertise in any of our fields of marketing, design, and accounting. Especially us in marketing and design suffer a lot from that, since he will make changes to our strategies and posts, website, sometimes without telling us, then gets upset at us when the customer feedback is bad and we aren't reaching our predicted goals. So, recently, he told us that the reason he thinks we aren't seeing enough results is because we are manipulating our hours and not actually putting in the work we should. Until then, we each wrote down our hours manually in an Excel sheet, but with the new time tracking tool, he would see how long we were working down to the minute. We also could only log in on our desk PCs and previously approved home office devices, but not mobile because if you are not at your desk, it is not work. After our initial shock pass and our boss left for the day, our manager called for a meeting and we came up with a plan. We would do as he says, in the most just following the rules way possible. 1. We would not engage in work-related conversations with him unless we were sitting at our desks and are clocked in. 2. Any questions by him which are asked after we are clocked out will only be answered once we clock in again the following day. 3. Every phone call, text message, or otherwise work-related things outside the office would only be answered once there was an option for us to clock in, either the next day in office or for some of us on our home office device. 4. Since we no longer have the option to shift time manually, all work minutes and hours would be clocked exactly when they took place. Side note, in my country, weekends pay better, Sundays have to be paid double, and working after 8 p.m. warrants additional financial benefits by law. Previously, if we needed to post something real quick or had a question, we would just add the weekend hours or late time to the upcoming Monday. Basically, out of goodwill. But no more of that. 5. We would stop any independent activity, like posting on social media or writing an email, and would send him everything to approve before following through. After about a week, our boss was so fed up with this, he gave us the option to clock in from our mobile devices so he could get a more immediate response to his questions. However, this of course led to us clocking in way more frequently since, as I said, he likes to micromanage and is therefore asking a lot of questions. I'm happy to report that as of 2024, we have abolished the system again and regained most of our independence. And even though our boss is still pissed about how we exploited the system, it brought the team closer together and hopefully taught him a lesson. It's the most frustrating thing to deal with a micromanaging manager or boss. Somebody who is blaming every minute that you work or don't work for the lack of productivity. You have to be able to trust your employees, otherwise you're going to lose loyalty. Our next story is by Mango Physical 1308. Don't bother you anymore? Fine, I won't. I used to live in an apartment building that had shops on the main level. The building next door was the same. The two buildings all shared a wall. My building had assigned parking and yellow paper notes to put on our car window. A restaurant opened up in the building next door. Their owner, manager, and staff began parking in my spot as well as the neighbors. I spoke with the owner and she said she would talk to them again, but didn't think it would help. They were even parking in her spot. Every night I would get home, call them, and ask that the vehicle be moved. I was getting tired of this when one night they put the manager on because they were busy and didn't have time to deal with my request. He did do it, but told me they wouldn't do it again and I was to stop calling them. I suggested they stop parking in my assigned spot. He told me he had too many staff to control where they parked and he was sure they were not parking in my spot. It was probably a customer. You know, because customers always park behind a business and then walk around the front to get in. The next time I worked evening shifts. I got home and this time there was a Range Rover parked in my spot. I dutifully called the tow truck and not the restaurant. I had to wait for a second tow truck because the first one was not equipped to move a vehicle of that type. Something about being jacked up and stuff. They explained it, and the wait was because I didn't know enough to be able to answer their questions about the truck, so they could send out the right truck first. They towed it, and I went in and went to bed. A few hours later, I was awakened by a phone call from the towing company. I had towed the owner, and he was telling them it was his parking spot and that I had no right to tow him. They were going to bill me for the tow. I told the caller about my landlord's parking permits, the numerous phone calls to them to move, about being told not to bother them anymore, and that his restaurant was in the next building with a separate parking lot. We said goodbye, and I never heard anything more about it. I was also able to park in my spot after. I told my neighbor, and he told me just to be safe, I should tell the owner of the other building. I popped into her shop and told her. She replied with something to the effect of, "You towed the Range Rover." I said yes. She started to laugh and basically said, "Good for you," and told me it was the restaurant owner's truck. Still makes me smile when I think of it. It makes me actually wonder if this guy thought that he really did own that parking space. If he was just mistaken and thought that he actually owned that parking space. What could he possibly hope to gain from lying to the tow company and telling him it's his spot? You know they're going to call the guy that's contesting the parking space and be like, "He says it's his. Do you have proof that it's yours?" And he'll be like, "Yeah, I have proof." He doesn't. I just don't understand his thought process. Our next story is by Automatic Move 5976. Won't pay my dues? Pay double for my training. Several years ago, I was employed by a government agency. I'm a professional and I have mandatory continuing education requirements to keep my license. The agency, reluctantly, was paying the bare minimum for my annual license renewal and would pay for the cheapest annual training. A subgroup of the licensing entity exists for professionals who want to work in the same niche as me. During the relevant time frame, the dues for the subgroup were $15 annually. The subgroup offered a package of all the required training, 1 hour each of 2 mandatory subject areas and a total of 12.5 hours. Most commercial training is around $150 to $200 per hour, although there are some freebies here and there used by companies as advertising, but not usually very relevant to my job. The relevant subgroup training was $50 to members, so membership and training could be paid in one check for $65, a bargain. Agency Bean Counter said they could not pay the $15, so for a number of years I refused to join the group, and the Bean Counter paid $100 for my training. After a number of years, I transferred to a different agency. New Bean Counter had no issue with paying the membership to save money. It's amazing how often Malicious Compliance is just an employee trying to do the business a favor and save them money, and they don't see it that way, and then they get screwed over in the long run. Our stories for today have come to a close. Until we meet again, have a remarkable day.